How to Analyze People: Communication, Personalities, and Behavioral Psychology Explained. Written by Jaden Haywards. Narrated by Jason Burkhead. Chapter 1. How to Analyze People. Whether motivating someone or negotiating with them, communication is how you will get it done. Communicating with others is one of the most important skills you can develop. It can make or break a career. The communication process is the base for all persuasion and negotiation, as well as many other skills and tasks a leader must perform. It may be the most important thing we do. Textbooks delve into communication as defining it with terms such as the sender and message recipient, and discussing any response to any stimulus as communication. In this portion, rather than analyzing different models of the communication process, basic principles of communicating and being understood will be addressed. In business, especially in leadership roles, objectives and goals are important. Effective communication will assist in achieving these. Communicating with other individuals and communicating to groups are important skills to master. There are many ways to communicate with others. However, for purposes here, the focus will be on oral communication or speaking. Communication style. Research suggests that if you can control communication style, you can control the outcome of most interactions. Communication style is concerned with how you say what you say. Many times people respond to how something is said, the style or manner in which the words are used, more than what the actual words mean. Many learned the golden rule when younger. Treat everyone as you want to be treated. Unfortunately, this is not necessarily the best approach to effective communication. Treating everyone the same with communication results in being effective with only those who share the same communication style. This unintentional miscommunication can be a significant factor in unsuccessful relationships and negotiations. There are various communication style models. Here is an example of 4 different communication style characteristics. Style A: outspoken, impatient, decisive, short conversations, frequently interrupts, not a good listener, focuses on objectives and results. Style B: very reserved, deliberate, careful and patient listener, likely to ask very specific detailed questions, will take notes while listening, focuses on process detailed information. Style C: spontaneous, talks at length, likely to tell stories and jokes, talks more than listens, focuses on challenge, action. Style D: very thoughtful, casual conversations, likely to tell people stories, good listener, asks general questions, focuses on feelings and relationships. No style is right or wrong, and each has its strengths and weaknesses. The key to effective communication is to recognize the styles and match your style to the person you wish to communicate with. An obvious example can be made with a person who communicates with style A meets up with someone who communicates with style D. The first person focuses on results, while the second person focuses on feelings and relationships. Person A will seem rude and brash to person D. D's feelings more than likely will be hurt, and communications between the two will not be effective. At the same time, A doesn't care about establishing the relationship that D does, and thinks all the feeling stuff is a waste of time and is keeping them from accomplishing the task. So A becomes frustrated with D and adds to the ineffectiveness of the communications between the two. If one of these two people can recognize the differences in communication styles and adapt their style to that of the other, much more will be accomplished with more effective communications between both parties. 5 ways to understand your communication style. As a professional, how you present yourself to others is critical to your success, and although technical skills are important in doing your job well, it is how well you communicate and get along with others is the real test of your true potential. Trust, transparency, authenticity, and rapport are the 4 cornerstones of effective communication, knowing that some people just naturally click with one another and others not so much. We can struggle to find common ground, which can lead to conflict and a negative work environment. What we don't always remember, however, is that each of us approach the world differently and have different communication styles. In communication, we tend to speak different languages. Master communicators understand fully the 4 cornerstones of effective communication, and they adapt their communication language to that of the other person. It doesn't mean that they would give up their native tongue, who they truly are. It just means they are willing to adapt their approach in order to most effectively engage with others. Adapting our behavioral and communication styles is one of the most important ways to apply the 4 cornerstones of effective communication, while also being willing to respect others and put their communication style preferences first. Remember, people want to be treated the way they want to be treated, not the way you think they should be treated. What are the communication and behavioral styles? No matter whose approach you study, you'll find that your behavior and communication style falls into one of 4 categories: the socializer, the commander, the thinker, the relator. The socializer is open in their communication style, and the focus is on people. They are enthusiastic and creative. They love to talk, love being the center of attention, and they're not much for details and organization. The commander is closed in their communication style, and the focus is on tasks. They are highly verbal, directive, know how to inspire, yet like to be in control and can be pushy. The thinker is closed in their communication style, and the focus is on tasks. They are detail oriented, reserved, regimented, and prefers to work alone rather than with a group. The relator is open in their communication style, and the focus is on people. They are friendly and accommodating, democratic and supportive. However, they will give in under pressure and have a tendency to value the approval of others. Understand different communication styles to manage teams more effectively. Managers who understand the different communication styles of their employees and learn to adapt to their own communications accordingly are more effective leaders. This is called versatility, and it is one of the most important skills managers must have to get the most out of their employees. Studies have shown that people are divided equally across 4 primary communication styles. Driver. This style is characterized by being action and goal oriented, independent, decisive, practical, disciplined, and efficient, and needing to see results quickly. Expressive. People with an expressive style enjoy excitement and interpersonal action, and are typically very sociable, enthusiastic, stimulating, and good at motivating others. They're idea-oriented rather than routines and react quickly in most situations. Amiable. The amiable style is characterized by valuing cooperation, acceptance, and personal security. Amiable people try to avoid conflict at all costs, desire approval from other team members, and prefer to work with others in a team effort instead of individually. Analytical. Employees with this style are concerned with being organized and having all the facts before taking careful action. They are orderly, precise, and methodical, and generally conform to an organization's standard operating procedures. Since each of these different communication styles represents about 25% of all people, managers only share a communication style with about 1/4 of their employees. This presents an obvious management challenge because a successful manager must effectively communicate with the other 3/4 of their team. They must be versatile and truly understand the personalities and motivations of their employees. Considering the differences in communication styles, it's no surprise that employees with different social styles describe the characteristics of an ideal manager in different ways. Drivers want managers to be sincere and direct. Expressives desire a manager that is open in communication, friendly, empathetic, and trusting. Amiables function best when a manager shows confidence in employees and is honest and trustworthy. And analyticals want managers to be knowledgeable and openly share information. Managers need to be acutely aware of their own behavioral tendencies, their approach to employee interaction, and the expectations of different employees. Being versatile and understanding the needs and communication style of each employee is critical in three primary situations. Conflict. Knowledge of different communication styles is very useful in addressing conflict situations because it helps people focus less on emotions and more on the resolution of the conflict, as well as identify the key differences at the root of the conflict. Performance reviews. Understanding communication styles is also important for ensuring productive one-on-one employee performance reviews. Approaching the appraisal with knowledge of the specific employee's communication style can help put them at ease and make them more receptive to feedback on their performance. Goal setting. Gaining employee buy-in when setting the direction for a company or department is critical to achieving goals. Knowledge of different communication styles can help managers focus on the interests that are important to different employees, showing how each of them will benefit from the course of action. Many studies have shown that the most common reason employees leave a company is a poor relationship with their manager. Turnover, performance, productivity, and employee satisfaction can all be improved when managers take the time to learn their employees' different communication styles. They can build better, happier teams that work closely together to achieve a common goal. What are the 4 communication styles? 1. Driver. Hardworking and ambitious. Drivers tend to be the group's leader, who value getting the job done with excellent results. Drivers are apt to be decisive, competitive, hard driving, and good at delegating to others. They like to be where the action is and are likely to enjoy taking risks. Their focus is on winning, being successful, and making things happen. They need options and prefer when others are direct. On the downside, they can be pushy, demanding, dominating, tough, and exclude others from decision making. Under stress, they become autocratic and order others around. 2. Analytical. Quick to think and slow to speak. The analytic person values accuracy in the details and likes to be right. This is a person who plans thoroughly before deciding to act, is persistent, highly organized, cautious, and logical. The analytical prefers to work alone and has a tendency to be introverted. The analytical person is focused on process, tasks, and doing things the right way. They prefer a rational approach, logical thinking, solid documentation, and careful planning. The downside is that they have a tendency towards perfectionism and can be critical, picky, and stubborn, as well as indecisive. Under stress, they are likely to avoid others. 3. Expressive. The expressive person loves to have fun and enjoys helping others. This person is full of ideas and can't wait to share them with others. Talkative and open, he asks others for their opinions and loves to brainstorm. This is someone who is flexible and easily bored with routine. The expressive is optimistic, intuitive, creative, and spontaneous, and may have a tendency to be flamboyant. Expressives are focused on the big picture. They love ideas and concepts and thrive on bringing visions into reality. They need innovation and look to others to handle the details. On the downside, they can be overly dramatic, impulsive, a tad flaky, and undisciplined. 4. Amiable. Amiable is the relationship style. Amiables focus on the feelings of other people and effective collaboration. People with this style are intuitive and care about how situations feel. They like consensus, avoid confrontation, and tend to be timid about voicing contrary opinions. Amiable people are good listeners, friendly and sensitive, and build networks of friends to help them. They are likely to be slow with big decisions and need a lot of input. They thrive on involvement, participation, and inclusion. On the downside, the amiable person can be hesitant, unsure of himself, and dependent on others. Under stress, they acquiesce or yield to the decisions of others. How to use communication styles to maximize the effectiveness of your communication. Knowing about the communication styles is helpful in 2 ways. First, when you know your own default style, you can spot the best opportunities to use that style and build up your strengths. You can also see where you have gaps and where you can improve by learning from the other styles. Second, once you know about the styles, you can spot someone else's style and adapt the way you communicate in order to get the person on board with you. Eventually, you can learn how to use each style comfortably and maximize the chances that others will follow your suggestions. This is at the heart of great leadership, and it is why knowing about the communication styles is a powerful element of great leadership. Here are some suggestions on how to communicate effectively with each of the 4 communication styles. Driver. When you communicate with a driver, be sure to tell him or her about progress to goals, the actions to be taken, and solutions to problems. Avoid chit-chat and focus on the bottom line. Be clear, concise, focused, relevant, decisive, and efficient. When working with a driver, here's what you would say if you encounter a problem that may interfere with getting to successful results. I know you're pushing to finish this by tomorrow with great results. Based on my research and investigation, I think there might be a hitch. I have some ideas on how to solve that. Would you like to discuss this? Analytical. The analytical person asks for data, information, and facts. Therefore, it is important to be precise, specific, thorough, prepared, accurate, rational, and orderly in dealing with him or her. If you want to get the analytical person's attention, you might say something like this. The research and data seems inconsistent with our initial concept. I have two ideas that would improve the quality and timelines of the project. I need 15 minutes of your time. Can we meet today at 4? Expressive. Expressives thrive on vision, stories, and analogies, and love to have fun while working on projects. Therefore, the communicating with an expressive person, be sure to focus on the big picture. Deliver your message in a way that is enthusiastic, expressive, friendly, flexible, and open to possibilities. Avoid getting bogged down in too many details. I've got a fabulous idea to make our project amazing and knock it out of the ballpark. Do you have a minute to talk? Amiable. Your amiable friend or colleague cares deeply about the relationship. He or she is interested in information about others' skills and interests, valuing input with others, and welcoming feedback. In dealing with an amiable person, be sure to be warm, relaxed, involving, caring, and inviting. This is the person to go to if there are tensions on the team, whether that is a string quartet or a work group. A way to get his or her attention is to say, I have a strong feeling that there's something bothering you about the team. Would you like to hear my thoughts on how we might help everyone out here so that we can make sure that everyone is on board? Chapter 2. A woman's communication style versus a man's. Everyone has their own way of communicating with others, and it influences the way folks respond to us. You'll have to understand the various communication styles if you want to get your man's attention. There are 4 styles of communication. 3 of them will turn a man off, and the other is a turn on. The 4 styles of communication are as follows. Passive. In this style, individuals tend to avoid expressing their opinions or feelings. Passive communication is usually born of low self-esteem. Passive individuals won't respond overly to hurtful or distressing predicaments. In contrast, they will permit all of the grievances and annoyances to build until they reach their threshold for poor behavior. As a result, they are inclined to fierce outbursts. Passive communicators will often demonstrate poor eye contact and poor posture, are likely to speak softly and apologetically, don't assert themselves, do not verbalize their opinions, needs, or feelings, allow others to infringe on their rights, whether it is deliberately or inadvertently. Aggressive. Aggressive communication is a style in which individuals will state their opinions and feelings and promote their needs in a way that could possibly impose on the rights of others. Therefore, aggressive communicators are physically and or verbally abusive. Aggressive communicators will often exhibit piercing eye contact and a dominating posture, speak in a loud and demanding voice, aspire to overpower, attack, blame, or criticize others. Do not pay close attention and interrupt repeatedly. Exploit humiliation to manipulate others. Passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive communication is where people appear passive in the outside while acting out anger in a subtle, indirect way on the inside. Those who develop passive-aggressive communication tendencies usually feel resentful and incapable of responding to the object of their resentments directly. Passive-aggressive communicators will often display facial expressions that do not correspond with their feelings, like smiling when angry, reject the idea of any problem, mumble to themselves as opposed to confronting the person or issue, have a hard time recognizing their anger, employ sarcasm and sneaky sabotage to get even. Assertive. When individuals use assertive communication, they convey their opinions and feelings plainly and firmly, while indicating their opinions and needs without violating the rights of others. Of the 4 styles of communication, Assertive is always the sexiest to a guy on account of he always knows where he stands with you. He respects you because you can get your position across calmly and firmly, so there's never any confusion. As opposed to passive communication, where he can't figure out what you want because you won't say, or aggressive communication, where you yell and try to intimidate him, and passive aggressive communication, where you say one thing but mean something else altogether. Assertive communicators will demonstrate good eye contact and relaxed body posture, stand up to their rights, and not allow anyone to mistreat or manipulate them, describe their wants and needs clearly and respectfully, speak in a relaxed and uncomplicated tone of voice. Listen well without interrupting. Being assertive is the art of standing up for yourself in a diplomatic style. Here's the gist of it. If your fella has plans to spend yet another Saturday on the golf course as opposed to doing something with you, your normal reaction may be to yell and hang up on him or stampede out of the room. Well, the next time this kind of scenario pops up, calmly point out, I was hoping to spend this Saturday together. What do you think? Can you make some time to go to a movie Saturday afternoon and then somewhere nice for a dinner? Your guy will be more accommodating to a compromise, or perhaps even determine that he can skip golf this weekend when you present your case in a reasonable manner. Communication style meeting the personality style of those you speak to. If you match your communication style with the personality style of those you speak to, you can improve your communication skills. To do so, you need to understand the personality and behavioral styles of the audience. What are the personality styles? The most common breakdown is into 4 types. Using the CAPS principle, people will tend to dominate in one of the 4 types: controller, analyst, promoter, supporter. Controllers, also known as drivers, seldom listen to others around them, focusing on the tasks at hand. They tend to only need to know what, usually can figure out how and why. So when speaking to them, they will tend to only need to know what is the job to be done. Promoters tend to not like isolation and will tend to vie for attention. They will tend to exaggerate and or leave out facts and details. To best reach their personality, a speaker needs to address why the job needs to be done. Supporters are the worker bee of an organization. They tend to yield rather than deal with a possible confrontation, have the ability to blend into any situation well. They may appear wishy-washy at times. One common trait is a difficulty with making firm decisions. Many are music, poetry, and art lovers. They will appreciate the what and why of the job to be done being explained. However, their biggest need is how to do the job to be done. The analyst is a logical and detailed-oriented person. They will tend to withdraw themselves and quietly gather information rather than make a quick decision. To make a decision without all the facts can be difficult. They tend to be the accountants and engineers. They may note tendencies towards being highly critical in this group. They will also tend to be pessimistic in nature. They are very perceptive. To reach them will require giving what, why, how, and when regarding the job to be done. Personality styles are ways people act or react in given circumstances. People will tend to change and even adapt depending on the situation and their purpose. A controller could turn into a totally subservient supporter when faced with a healthcare crisis within the family. A supporter could turn into a controller if a lack of quality healthcare is perceived. It is necessary to mirror the personality style with the type of communication. To establish rapport with the different personality styles, 1. Determine the tendency of your own personality. 2. Determine the personality style of those being spoken to. 3. Increase or decrease the qualities within yourself to match those you are speaking to. When speaking to an audience, if speaking to an audience, try to speak to each of the personality styles. This can be done by matching your communication style to the personality or listening styles of those in your audience. How can you know? How can you know which types you're talking to? Think of the audience globally. Are they managers, employees, business people, or local residents? The purpose of the talk should give some clue to the motivation of those coming to hear it. Within that motivation, consider which personality type would typically be interested. They focus on your speaking to match their listening and personality style. You can try to reach all four, but focus on the greatest effort to reach the dominant personality of the group. Try this. If you frequently give speeches and in your one-on-one communication, occasionally leave out or decrease your coverage of one of the four, what, why, how, when, and look at what kind of feedback you get, and consider the personality types that are giving it. One occasion, I gave a lecture focused towards controllers. My highest praise came from a pharmaceutical rep. I received almost no feedback from the supporters. The next time speaking to the same group, I focused on the supporters and got rave reviews from them. To have the controllers tell me it was a bit boring. Observe the compliments and complaints at the end, and the personality types that they come from. This will be a good indicator of your speech and communication strength and weaknesses. Once you know how to reach the various types, you can adjust your communication style to reach the entire audience. By learning to reach the four types, you will be able to attain speech mastery. More importantly, you will attain rapport with your audience, be they 1 or 1,000. Communication differences between men and women. Men and women do communicate differently since they've grown up behaving in different ways. Girls use conversation and telling secrets as a way to build close relationships, while boys engage in physical activity and have more hierarchical relationships. For men, talk means status, and when they have to listen to women, they may feel they have diminished status. Men and women are wired differently. Women's brains are better at verbal duties, while men's brains perform better on visual, spatial, and mathematical exercises. It's no surprise that women prefer to talk and men would rather do something than say something. According to Deborah Tannen, in relationships, women want to have rapport talk, while men want to report talk. According to Melissa Dittman Tracy, women's brains love details, are constantly active, and they can multitask. Men just want facts, while women's focus on relationship building. 10 ways how men and women are different in conversation. 1. Jumping topics. Women stay focused on one topic, while men jump from topic to topic. 2. Body language. Women face each other while men talk to each other at angles and look in other places in the room, and even sometimes at their conversation partner. 3. Problem solving. Women want to establish rapport with the other person, while men want to fix the problem. 4. Apologies. Women apologize more, hoping to create or sustain connections. Men don't like to apologize since they view them as a loss of face. 5. Verbal fillers. Women use and go on as a way of connecting with others, while men are most likely to stay silent. 6. Speaking in front of others. Men want to give their opinion and advice. Women don't want to express themselves so openly in a group since a woman is thinking about what her peers think of her opinion. 7. Negotiation. Women prefer discussion, their goal being consensus, while men favor more direct communication and want speedy results. 8. Chatterbox. Surprisingly, in a long run, men and women talk about the same amount. The differences are in the subject and goals of the discussions. Women talk more to family and close friends, exchanging support and experiences, while men exchange information whether at work or in formal or social situations. 9. Interrupting. Women interrupt to demonstrate concern. Men interrupt to try to control the conversation. 10. Email. Women send email regarding relationships. Men may be seeking information, influence, and respect. What is an audience analysis? An audience analysis is essentially a study of customer needs and wants. This could either be explicit, implicit, or both. The key is to gather as much information as possible so that the final product will be well received by the target audience. In terms of its importance, audience analysis ranks highly with technical writers due to the content of their writing. Therefore, it is particularly important for them to know who their audience is, especially in terms of their needs and wants. What they know or do not know, their level of understanding, their perspectives and views, as well as expectations are useful information to a writer or speaker. How can audience analysis be better written? Understand the meaning and purpose of the analysis. The analysis is all about appreciating the profile and characteristics of a group of people so that an offering can be customized for them. The analysis would help determine, among others, the most appropriate style, tone, format, and amount of information required. Appreciate the need for it. Why write an audience analysis? What is it for? How will an audience analysis help a speaker or writer? Appreciating the value of the analysis will enable it to better focus on factors such as audience background, the situation, and context in which the final product will be delivered. Understanding how the analysis will be used by the writer or speaker to tailor their delivery will greatly help the manner in which the document is written. Important elements of an audience analysis. The target audience. Who are they? What would they know or not know in terms of the offering? What are their personal details such as age, gender, occupation, education, location, etc.? Why would they want or need the information? How or why would it be of interest to them? What would be the situation under which the document will be received? When and where would it be delivered? What would the needs, wants, and expectations of the audience in terms of the subject or topic of the document? What other special needs might there be, and what is the degree to which the document is to be customized? What would the audience expect to take away in terms of benefit after reading or hearing the information? Chapter 3. Freud's Basic Psychological Analysis and Carl Jung's Classification. To address major issues of the essay, it is necessary to distinguish the basic concepts used in the course of work. Freud's analysis and theory. Psychoanalysis, from Greek psyche or soul, and analysis or decision. Part of psychotherapy, medical research method developed by Sigmund Freud for the diagnosis and treatment of hysteria. He was then reworked by Freud's psychological doctrine aimed at studying the hidden connections and the foundations of human mental life. This doctrine is based on the assumption that a certain set of pathological ideas, especially sexual, are ousted from the sphere of consciousness and has been operating from the sphere of the unconscious, which is thought as an area of domination of sexual desires, and under various mass investments penetrates the consciousness and threatens the spiritual unity it included in the world around him. In the action, such repressed complexes blamed forgetfulness, reservations, dreams, and false deeds, neurosis, hysteria, and the treatment they tried to conduct such a way that during a conversation, analysis, could easily cause these complexes from the depths of the unconscious and to eliminate them through interviews or appropriate action, namely to give them a chance to respond. Proponents of psychoanalysis are credited with sexual libido, a central role in treating human mental life in general, as the scope of the rule of unconscious sexual desires for pleasure or displeasure. Based on the foregoing and essence of psychoanalysis, we may consider three levels: psychoanalysis as a method of psychotherapy, psychoanalysis as a method of studying the psychology of personality, psychoanalysis as a system of scientific knowledge on the attitudes, psychology, and philosophy. Having considered the basic psychological meaning of psychoanalysis, we shall henceforth refer to it as world vision system. As a result of creative evolution, Freud considers the organization of mental life as a model that has its components different psychic instance of the term it, the id, I, ego, and the superego, superego. Under it, id, it is understood the most primitive instance, which covers all innate, genetically primary, and subordinate to the pleasure principle, and knows nothing about either reality or about society. It is inherently irrational and immoral. It must satisfy the requirements of the instance I, ego. Ego, to the principle of reality, producing a number of mechanisms to adapt to the environment to cope with its requirements. Ego is a mediator between stimuli, reaching as that of the medium in fourth of the ego is a mediator between stimuli, reaching as that of the medium and from the depths of the body. On the one hand, the response, on the other, motor responses. The functions of the ego are self-preservation of the body, the seal of the experiences of external influences in memory, avoiding threatening impacts, control over the requirements of the instincts emanating from the id. Particular importance was attached to the superego, or superego, which serves as a source of moral and religious feelings, the controlling agent and punishable. If id is predetermined genetically, but I is a product of individual experience, then the superego is a product of influences emanating from other people. It occurs in early childhood, due according to a frame with the Oedipus complex, and has remained virtually unchanged in subsequent years. The superego is formed through the mechanism of identification with a child's father, who serves as a model for him. If I, ego, will make a decision or take an action in favor of it, id, but in contrast to the superego, It suffers the penalty of effort's conscience, feeling of guilt. The way super I draws into energy from the id. The same way super I is often overacting violently, even sadistically. Because of the stress experienced by the pleasure of various forces, I, ego, is saved from the help of special defense mechanisms: repression, rationalization, regression, sublimination, displacement, and others. Repression means involuntary removal from the consciousness of feelings, thoughts, and aspirations into action. Moving to the area of unconsciousness, they continue to motivate behavior. Pressure on him are experienced as feelings of anxiety. Regression, not slipping more primitive level of behavior or thought. Sublimination, one of the mechanisms by which the taboo sexual energy, by moving to non-sexual objects, is discharged in the form of acceptable to the individual and society. A variety of sublimination is creativity. Carl Jung's classification. Psychology of C.G. Jung is expressed of his inner development. Personal experiences, dreams, memories, and reflections serve as a base for his scientific research into a human mind and the ways it works. Jung gives the psyche more complex meaning than soul and uses it to describe all psychic processes that can be divided into conscious and unconscious. Human ego is operating on these two levels, with consciousness constituting only a small part of the psyche. Unconsciousness dominates this model, including all of the elements that we're not consciously aware of and those that were repressed, forgotten, or subliminated. Ego, being a subject of consciousness, is focused on adaptation of the world. Individual unconsciousness is called by Jung personal, as an opposite to collective unconsciousness that is the function of inherited brain structure. The unconscious is primal factor on which conscious is built on. Jung understands conscious as a dynamic force, synthesis of functions, thinking, intuition, feeling, and sensation. All those functions remain the same irrespective of circumstances. Thinking and feeling are classified as rational because of their qualities of judging and evaluating. Since intuition and sensation operate on perceptions that are not evaluated or judged, they are classified as irrational. All of those functions are present in individual, with one becoming dominant in the course of time. The type of dominant function is directly linked to the type of personality attributes, to specific type of behavior and habits. Superior function tend to be unconscious, whilst its opposite, called by Jung inferior part, is placed in unconscious. Two remaining parts belong partly to conscious and partly to unconscious. In the case of a neurotic person, correlation between attributes are distorted and changed by compulsion or training. Altogether, 4 functions symbolize wholeness, and in theory, all of them can be raised to conscious level to constitute a complete individual. Since no one can apprehend entirely his unconscious, an individual can only progress towards his ideal, never achieving it. The main aim of analysis is to make this process as sufficient as possible, enabling a person to apprehend unconscious content intellectually and discover its potentiality with the help of intuition. Whatever the type of function based on unconscious level, its main feature is unreliability. It represents archaic and basic element of psychological setup. Whole personality is not only expressed by a mixture of functions, with one dominating the rest, but also by general attitude. There are two main attitudes, extroversion and introversion, dynamicizing the entire psyche and determining subjects' response to the inner and outer reality. Extrovertical personality is motivated positively by external environment. This type is characterized as well-adjusted, influenced by collective norms, oriented towards external world, and motivated by object. The introvert is described as not adequately adjusted, motivated by internal psyche process, and oriented towards a subject. Though the type of attitude is determined by biology, it can be modified or changed by constructing of the psyche. That can be achieved by triggering biological factor or through analysis. When the obstruction of the flow of energy happens to be dealing with symptoms are expressed on conscious level and indicate some inadequacy in attitude. Other phenomena visible on the same level as complexes. Complexes are psyche elements that separate from conscious and continue its existence beyond the control of individual. Complex can be a very powerful factor. Its intensity exceeding conscious intentions, but also dynamic element motivating a change. When collective unconscious is concerned, Jung introduces the idea of archetypes. Archetypes, mythological elements, visions, and symbols, are products of mankind's history and influences on lives of individuals. The archetype can be expressed in a form of primordial image, static form, or as a differentiation of function of consciousness, dynamic process. The archetypes are symbols of instinctive reaction towards outer world and as such are psychologically necessary. They can be described as inherited pattern of psychic behavior. There is more to it than biological factor. Archetype can be fundamental experience of numinous. The psychic energy is called by Jung libido. This term expresses dynamic and intensity of the psychic processes, such as drives, wishes, and will. On the whole, the psychic process are expressed according to the law of opposition that ensure balance, harmony, and totality of the psyche. One process is replaced by another, flow into another. The law of conservation of energy is maintained through the life. Psychic energy, libido, can cause neurosis and complexes. The energy has also a direction and can make progressive and regressive movement. Progressive movement is expressed by adequately adjusting to the world, whilst regressive movement is a result of failure to adapt. Those two forms of energy can also be directed inward, introversion, or outward, extroversion, and can differ in its intensity. The energy can be manifested in a form of an image with the use of imagination that is a way of introducing order into the unconscious, dreams, fantasies, and visions. According to Jung, psychotherapy is not only a form of healing, but can be also a salvation and ultimately lead to fulfillment of personality. This process can be fully experienced only on personal levels as a spiritual guidance. Everyone is striving for a goal, finality, and has a sense of purpose orienting him or her towards the future. Striving for purpose is expressed by confrontation with environment and others. This process is dialectical. All confrontation leads to interaction that culminates in synthesis. Synthesis can be expressed as a dialogue between two minds, e.g., during analysis, is a new value that transcends both confrontation and interaction. Therapy is based on such methods as association, symptom analysis, a nominalistic analysis, and analysis of the unconscious. The important part of this process is analysis of dreams, fantasies, and visions. So, accent is placed on interpretations of dreams, differentiating between types of dreams and its roots. Dream can be a way of compensation and a key to the childhood. There is always individual and collective meaning of dreams, different interpretations of dreams and its projections. Symbol, e.g., mandala, universal religious symbol revealing common psychic structure, is significant in dream interpretation. Symbol as a representation and transform of energy can have two meanings. Expressive is expressed in a form of image, and impressive, make an impression by influencing psychic processes. Symbols can express personal experience, but also archetypal components of the psyche. It is a product of the whole psychic and can't be explained only rationally. Intuition is necessary in a process of its understanding and interpretation. Analysis helps to achieve the wholeness of the personality. Wholeness is never definite, but always relative. It's the product of self-realization, self-fulfillment, or individuation. Though individuation is a natural process of development of psychic, it can be helped analysis. Process of individualization requires experience of a shadow. Shadow contains all repressed elements or those that cannot be used and can be manifested as a symbolic figure. Equally important in the process of individualization is soul image or anima, animus in woman. It symbolizes the image of opposite sex. Person can experience inner form of anima, animus, in dreams and fantasies or when projecting unconscious psyche on another person. Outward form. Individual is making process by perceiving and accepting his or her contrasexual element. That ensures independence and helps to handle the emotions. Once soul image is apprehended, it can be raised on conscious level, perfecting the whole personality. Even though Carl Jung was Sigmund Freud's student, he followed his own path, after disagreeing with his teacher. While Freud's basic analysis concentrated on the sexual field, Jung paid attention to many other characteristics of the psychological world that could not be justified by Freud's theories. He concentrated his attention on the meaning of dreams, this way discovering the hidden code of their interpretation. Carl Jung's psychology is based on dream analysis, exactly because Jung managed to understand the mysterious dream language and verified that the dream messages contain objective information about the dreamer and his or her objective reality. They even show to the dreamer what the future development of his or her life will be depending on various factors. Because the unconscious mind that produces our dreams processes extraordinary wisdom. Therefore, Jung concluded that the unconscious mind is a superior counselor that we should listen to, and further researched the content of the human psyche through dream interpretation. He discovered the existence of various images that appear in dreams and its artistic and religious manifestations of people that belong to different civilizations. Though all historical times, which are archetypes. The archetypes define the most important aspects of human life and the necessary psychological transformation that the human being has to pass through in order to develop completely his personality. Jung explained the unconscious mind in two parts: the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious. The content of the personal unconsciousness belongs to the person's life, like fears and traumas they have acquired because of their deceptions and sad experiences. The content of the collective unconscious belongs to the human race and characterizes everyone. This is why the archetypes have an already known specific meaning that can help us understand what is happening with a person who is feeling depressed or having mental disturbances when they appear in their dreams or artistic creations. The most important archetypes are the anima or animus. They represent the perfect match for a man or a woman. The shadow, it represents the dark side of the human personality that did not develop like our conscious mind. The persona, it represents the social mask one wears in order to give a positive impression to their environment or to hide their real intentions. We can understand our mistakes and learn how to solve our problems by following the instructions given to us in dream messages by the collective unconscious through the archetypes, since they reflect our own psychological content. They belong to the human race because they reveal general truths, common obstacles, the common human attitude to all challenges of life, and other aspects that are part of everyone's psychological transformation. If a certain archetype appears in someone's dream, this means that it is reflecting the existence of a common mental illness in their psyche, or a common social problem in their own lives. After continuing Carl Jung's research and simplifying his method of dream interpretation, I realized that his conception about the personal unconscious was misleading. Since the archetypes give us precious information about the personal life of the dreamer, even though using known images that appear in everyone's dreams, therefore, we don't need to separate the unconscious mind into personal and collective. What has to be separated is the wild side of the human conscious from the wise unconscious mind. Jung could not see the distinction between them because he has stopped his research in a certain point, accepting ignorance from that point on. Therefore, the human psyche is composed by the human conscious, the anti-conscience or wild conscience, the wise unconscious mind that produces our dreams. However, we should always remember with gratitude that Carl Jung discovered the right code for a perfect dream translation, even if he could not understand completely the functionalism of the dreaming system with the knowledge he had. Chapter 4: The Theory of Personality Types A, B, C, and D. Both researchers, Friedman and Rosenman, drew the conclusion that people who exhibited characteristics of type A personalities were more likely to suffer from heart disease. They based their theory on the characteristics that seem to be universal for people who exhibit traits of a type A personality, traits including but not limited to unnecessary stress, obsession with time management, aggression, and hostility. While this theory has since been disproven, it seems to hold some of its accuracy. Researchers now know that stress is a major factor for developing heart disease, which is typical of a type A personality. However, it is also possible for a more laid-back person, subtype B, to suffer from heart disease, hence the theory being disproven, but still holding slight merit. People with type B personalities tend to be less stressed and slower paced than the stressed out type A personality. They tend to be flexible and tolerant individuals and are not overcome with feeling of guilt should they decide to take time to enjoy life. Over the years, the theory of personality has become widely accepted and used as a tool for understanding oneself opposed to a diagnostic tool. In today's day and age, personality tests is often used in schools for career testing, by psychologists in psychology classes, pre employment screenings, and self awareness assessments. Modern day psychologists have added a personality type C as well as a personality type D into the mix, as researchers began to find more characteristics that society shares. They are now able to add these two newer subtypes in an attempt to more accurately assess one's personality. Type C and Type D personalities share a lot of the same traits as their sister subtypes, but they seem to take into account more of the emotional aspect than their counterparts. For instance, Type C personalities often show similar characteristics to Type A people, however, they're not as obsessed with time management. Type C personalities also have a hard time sharing their emotions, are often categorized as emotionally repressed people. Type D people like routine. They search for security and routine in their daily lives. And once they find what they're looking for, a change in pace or pattern is not likely for these people. Three major concepts of psychoanalytical theory. Sigmund Freud was most noted for his five-stage theory of human development. This theory originated through his observations and thorough documentation of adults' recollections of memories during therapy sessions and was conceptualized by Sigmund Freud himself. Freud began his work in the 1880s, and by the end of the 1890s, his theory began to take on more of a formal attributes of its five stages. The theory was in response mainly to patients with hysterical symptoms who had reported sexual traumas that occurred early in their lives and the subsequent repression, or subconscious pushing away, of these sexual traumas as well as other uncomfortable thoughts of previous life events. Although a comprehensive review of all of the underlying assumptions regarding Freud's theory of personality theory and the massive quantity of information that he wrote during his lifetime that would be virtually impossible to sum up, even over a period of many years, are far beyond the scope of his project, some of the major assumptions will be discussed. However, with the respect of the overall knowledge base and for the benefit of greater understanding of the five-stage theory, it is my opinion that prior to discussion of this stage theory of personality development, it is essential that his theories of the division of the mind and his components of personality are mentioned, as these two major concepts are intrinsically intertwined with his five-stage theory. One major concept and underlying assumption of Freud's theory subdivides the human mind into three distinct categories. According to his theory, the components of the mind include the conscious, preconscious, and subconscious areas. Freud, 2002 Revised Edition. As is implied by the title, the conscious mind consists of those things of which we are currently aware and to which we are currently attentive. The conscious mind also includes our current thinking processes, behaviors, and environmental awareness. Hence, it can be obviously concluded that the conscious mind constitutes the major part of our current awareness. This concept can be validated as most people have, on occasion, heard statements from others such as, "I have a clean conscience," or "I was not conscious of that at the time," in casual conversations. Also, according to Freud's theory, the preconscious mind consists of all those things of which we are aware but currently are not attentive. Freud, 2002 Revised Edition. He further conceived that we can choose to pay attention to these and deliberately bring them into the conscious mind. Finally, with respect to the preconscious mind, Freud believed that we can control our awareness to a certain extent. from focusing in very closely on one conscious act to a wider awareness that seeks to expand consciousness to include as much of preconsciousness information as possible. At the subconscious level, the process and content are out of direct reach of the conscious mind. The subconscious thus thinks and acts independently. Freud, 2002 Revised Edition. One of Freud's key findings was that much behavior is driven directly from the subconscious mind. This has the alarming consequence that we are largely unaware to control our behavior, and in particular, that which we would sometimes prefer to avoid. More recent research has shown that the subconscious mind is probably even more in charge of our actions than ever Freud had realized. Murphy, 2001. 3 major components of personality were included in Freud's massive overall theory. These components include the id, the ego, and the superego. The id contains our primitive drives and operates largely according to the pleasure principle, whereby its 2 main goals are the seeking of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Freud, 1962. Freud goes on to say that it has no real perception of reality and seeks to satisfy its needs, though what he called the primary processes that dominate the existence of infants, including hunger and self-protection. Unlike the id, the ego is aware of reality and operates using the reality principle. The reality principle implies that the ego recognizes what is real and understands that behaviors have consequences. This includes the effects of social rules that are necessary in order to live and socialize with other people. It uses secondary processes such as perception, recognition, judgment, and memory that are developed during childhood. The dilemma of the ego is that it has to somehow balance the demands of the id and superego with the constraints of reality. Freud, 1962. The ego controls higher mental processes, such as reasoning and problem solving, which is used to solve the id-superego dilemma, creatively finding ways to safely satisfy the id's basic urges within the constraints of the superego. The superego contains our values and social morals, which often come from the rules of right and wrong that we learned in childhood from our parents and are contained in the conscience. The superego has a model of an ego ideal, which it uses as a prototype against which to compare the ego and towards which it encourages the ego to move. The superego is a counterbalance to the id and seeks to inhabit the id's pleasure-seeking demands, particularly those for sex and aggression. Now we turn to what is the most famous aspect of Freudian theory, the 5 stages of human development. This theory sprung from Freud's observations of adults' recollections in therapy of their lives. Freud, 2003 Revised Edition. He stated in his work that children were not directly observed, although Freud's theory has been roundly criticized for its lack of scientific character. It does stand, however, as a grand metaphor for describing personality. The stages of development include the oral stage, which is the first stage. This stage begins at birth and generally ends at approximately 2 years of age. In the oral stage, infants and toddlers explore the world primarily with their most sensitive area, i.e., their mouths. They also learn to use their mouths to communicate. The next stage is the anal stage. This stage usually begins around 2 years of age and lasts for about a year. In the anal stage, children learn to control emulation of bodily waste. The phallic stage is the next stage. It generally begins at around 3 years and lasts until about age 5. The phallic age is probably the most controversial of all the stages because of the strong sexual underlying principles with respect to opposite parents at such an early age in life. To further explain, the controversy comes from Freud's description of the Oedipus and Electra complexes, with their attendant concepts of castration anxiety and penis envy, respectively. The Oedipus complex refers to a son's sexual attraction to his mother, while the Electra complex implies just the opposite. Those complexes lead, according to Freudian theory, to normal differentiation of male and female personalities. The defense mechanism of repression was invoked to explain why no one could remember the events of this stage. In this stage, Freud also theorizes that children discover their sexual differences and inequalities. The phallic stage is followed by a latency period in which little new development is observed. In this stage, boys play with boys and girls with girls. Typically, sexual interest is low or non existent. The final stage is the genital stage. It started around 12 years of age and ends with the climax of puberty. Sexual interests reawakened at this time. However, the sexual interests that come about during this period are appropriate and are toward genuine partners rather than opposite partners. It is my assertion that an arbitrary and somewhat capricious character can easily be concluded from Freud's theoretical framework. As it did with me, the importance of the divisions of the mind and the major components of personality with respect to decision-making processes and appropriate progression through each stage of development should also become apparent. To further explain, a person's level of awareness of self and surroundings should be directly proportional to a successful transition from birth to adulthood. The earlier in life this awareness begins should also increase the likelihood of successful personality development. Freud's assumptions about the function of social work are not clear, but it does appear that a firm understanding of his major concepts would be very useful to have when working in applied social settings. That is to say, with respect to applications in real-time social work practice situations. For example, it would be most advantageous to know if a person has successfully and functionally developed as an adult, if they have a keen sense of awareness, or if repression of past memories are factors. I truly believe that the aforementioned applications are also the major strengths of Freud's theory. As previously mentioned, Freud's work was so extensive that it is difficult, albeit not impossible, to determine its efficiency in most cases. The way I see it is that in most cases, Freud was successful. Although it cannot be accurately or adequately quantified as compared to applied behavioral analysis, for example, it appears that the application of his concepts could be beneficial to most anyone. Social learning theory. There are many people who contributed greatly to the study of human behavior, and one of them is a psychologist named Albert Bandura. He is the main proponent of the social learning theory, which even today is widely recognized as one of the best theories that explain the behaviors of human beings. Together with his Bobo doll experiment, Bandura came up with the social learning theory. So, what is the social learning theory about? Why is it considered as an effective theory? What made it different from other theories in the field of psychology? Here are some important things you should know about the social learning theory. The proponent. Albert Bandura is a well-known psychologist even today. He conducted several studies, authored many psychological books like Adolescent Aggression and Aggression, a social learning analysis, and many other articles. He also received major awards, such as receiving 12 honorary degrees from different universities, including University of British Columbia, University of Rome, University of Salamanca, Indiana University, and University of New Brunswick, among others. He was president of the American Psychological Association and the Western Psychological Association as well. Further, he garnered the most coveted Understanding Lifetime Contribution to Psychology Award by the APA in August 2004. The Bobo Doll Experiment. Do you ever wonder how the social learning theory came about? Well, thanks to Bandura's Bobo Doll Experiment. This one-of-a-kind experiment proved the value of observation and modeling the behaviors, attitudes, and emotional reactions of other people. The experiment showed that children mimic what others were doing to the Bobo dolls. If they saw someone punch and kick at a doll, they will also do the same. Modeling and how it is done. The social learning theory of Bandura put emphasis on modeling and how it is done. He pointed out that there are 4 steps involved, and these are attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. According to Bandura, if you want to model someone or something, you have to pay attention to every single detail. Retention is just as important, since it is only the manner by which you were able to synthesize and learn by heart what you have just observed. In order for modeling to be effective, you have to put into practice whatever you have learned. Lastly, you must be able to motivate yourself to do the act. You can provide intrinsic or extrinsic motivations and other forms of reinforcements to keep you going. The social learning theory of Bandura may just be another theory on human behavior, but we cannot deny the fact that it is proved to be very helpful. Once you apply the information provided by this theory, you will definitely help yourself become a better performer and to be the person you want to be. Theories of personality. What are some ways that human cultures differ? How do gender, race, and modernity figure in human culture? In relation to nature-nurture debate, behaviorism focuses on the nature or environment as a main cause of behaviors. From the environment, people learn 2 types of behaviors: classical and instrumental, or operant conditioning. In the first one, creatures associate stimuli that are close in time. In the second, consequences, which are either rewards or punishments, shape the learning and behaviors. Personally, I am aware that my unconscious makes association at all times, and I may be unaware of them for a while. I make sure that my associations or beliefs are supporting me and my desired lifestyle. I prefer rewards to punishments. Personally, at this stage in my life, I would never intentionally do anything deserving of punishment. I have successfully trained my cat and dog with rewards. They are so loving and obedient. A casting company here in Los Angeles had asked me to use them for movies, but I kept them at home. The social learning theory that cognitive variables such as values, competencies, strategies, systems, and plans determine people's responses. Bandura proved that learning expands with imitations and observations. These lead to behavioral responses, which, on their turn, lead to beliefs and self-efficiency, or control over dangerous environments. Thanks to Bandura's findings, I have always used mentors in my life to become more successful. Basically, I have been modeling my mentors. Human functioning is empowered by social learning. An example of this phenomenon is aggression, which is proven to be caused by observation of it. Living in Los Angeles, I have seen how gang members become gangsters. They grow in gang-link environment and they are exposed to gang behaviors all of the time. Despite their environment, thanks to education and mass media, they are capable of breaking through that circle. I think that it is also possible that aggressive genes play a role, such as in the example of some pit bull dogs. The environment presents different contexts that shape people's behaviors. Examples of context or social ecology are micro contexts, or imitate social situations, and macro contexts, or family and community, or social culture and history. Micro contexts are subject perceptions of behaviors and situations, prototypes, or scripts. Studies have shown that upper social class correlate with higher self-direction and internal control. Lower social classes tend to be obedient and conforming with authorities. This is obvious to me and common sense, such as in the gang example above, gender like race is another influential macro context. In most societies, men have higher control of public resources than women and can make more decisions and are freer than women. These facts fit the gender stereotypes. According to research, men are more aggressive, more directive, and more helpful in public acts than women. Women are more empathetic and interpersonal, intimate, are better interpreters of nonverbal behaviors, are friendlier, and more caring than men. As much as I believe in human equality, I have experienced gender discrimination, language accent discrimination, race and nationality discrimination. Theoretically, men and women have same rights, but we know that in practice they do not. Most employers would pay a man more for the same position and would hire a man if the man and the woman have the same qualifications, but the woman looks pregnant. The most inclusive behavioral macro context is culture. Culture is a system of rules that binds humans together in a specific group that provide beliefs to build life upon. Culture provides life meaning. I often refer to an Italian or European culture or an American culture and different types of organizational corporate cultures to relate to people in my private and professional practice. Cultures are organized by individualism or collectivism. Individualistic cultures focus on interdependence and autonomy. Collective cultures focus on community. Recent or modern cultures are more individualistic. Collectivism and individualism resonate with me. I am 33 years old and I moved to this country from Italy at age 20 to pursue my higher education. I am not a dual citizen of these two fascinating countries. They're different. My experience tells me that Italy is much more collective or family and community focused than the United States is. There is no right or wrong, I believe. It is a matter of different priorities, values, and benefits. The U.S. overall focuses on making and spending money before family. As a consequence, the U.S. makes more money than Italy, but also enjoys family and community life less. because that is second in the priority list. Generational and historical differences influence personality, including values and beliefs. Events happening in a person's late teens are likely to impact a person's life direction. For me, healing from eating disorders, solving conflicts with family, and moving to another continent were the confirmation that psychology is the field and arena I am most passionate about. And after overcoming these challenges, I am now able to make a difference by bringing my experience and understanding. Events happening in midlife could change the person's life direction. Now I am 33 years old, and I survived a divorce without having children, thankfully. I did a lot of work on myself in terms of letting go, healing, personal and financial development. I am now finally ready to attract better matches as my life partners, and I have. After my divorce in 2006, I've been valuing my career and independence and avoided any romantic relation. This year, I opened my heart and mind to sharing my life with someone. I'm not sure who that person is yet, but I have great men friends in my life. Historical events are subjectively interpreted by a person. For instance, on September 11th, I was living in New York, and my roommate who worked in the Twin Towers never came home. That event made me realize how fragile life can be. It made me be highly grateful for each day of my life. I do my best to live at the fullest each day. Personality traits distinguish different people in general, global and stable dispositions of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Trait theorist Allport defined traits as a neuropsychic structure that causes predictable behaviors and as both common and unique. Trait theorist Cattell researched 16 basic source traits that are the lion's share of variance in personality. Trait theorist Eisenach identified 3 basic traits: extroversion, introversion, neuroticism, and psychotism that shape individual differences in neuropsychology. Mechanicistic interactionism focuses on the interaction between trait and situation, which affects the behavior. Reciprocal interactionism explains how the person, the situation, and the behavior always influence one another. The last approach shows how a person changes behavior depending on the situation. Interactionism taught me to always consider all 3 variables before drawing a conclusion or make any type of assessment or diagnosis: trait, situation, and behavior. At the current moment, I am the behavioral interventionalist implementer for a severely autistic 6-year-old client. Cognitive, he's very low. To find the right placement for this kid, it is important to evaluate his traits, situations, and behaviors. In coaching an individual in life, business, and office organization, I implement systems that fit all 3 of these dimensions. Once again, they're traits, situation, and behaviors. In my former profession as a teacher, I practice the same rule. On my current radio show, when a caller calls in with a question, before answering, I quickly assess the above 3 dimensions as well. Chapter 5: How to go from introvert to extrovert. The introvert is a person that recharges their social batteries from doing solo activities, watching a movie, reading a book, watching TV, meditation, etc. An introvert also uses up a lot of his energy when he's in a social environment, especially when he is surrounded by strangers or meets new people. This is due to how introverts feel a more intense need to wear a social mask. When he is surrounded by people who know him well, he doesn't need that much energy because he doesn't need his social mask as badly. However, when surrounded by strangers, it is the opposite. An introvert's strong point is his ability to deeply connect with one person at a time, in the same way that it is easier for an extrovert to manage his interactions with a bigger group of people. The introvert excels when it comes to connecting with one person at a time. Also, studies show that most of the world's great inventors, engineers, and scientists are introverts. Who is the extrovert? As opposed to introverts, they recharge their batteries from participating in group activities and from being surrounded by people. Things like going to a party, attending social events, volunteering, and working with others are the type of activities that make extroverts recharge their social energy very fast. They don't feel the need to wear a social mask as much as introverts do. So they're more comfortable being natural. An extrovert uses a lot of energy when he has to do solo activities, like working alone and anything that might imply staying indoors by himself. He is not as good at listening to his own thoughts as the introvert is, which is why he spends so much energy when he has to do it. An extrovert's strong point is his ability to interact with groups of people, to be liked and wanted around by groups, and to be popular in general without much effort. It is harder for an extrovert to connect very deeply with one person, and his social skill is still at its best when in a group. As a child, I was very introverted, often spending my time on the computer, reading, playing video games, or pursuing other solo hobbies. I'd spend time outdoors biking, exploring the nearby fields and hills, which today are filled with houses, or shooting hoops. But I'd usually favor doing these things alone or with people I knew very well. I never felt too comfortable around strangers, and I never cared for big family events. Like many introverts, I was pressured by others to socialize more, but I largely resisted this pressure, partly because I enjoyed being an introvert. I often viewed extroverts as lacking in intelligence and depth, and I can't say I wanted to count myself among them. However, over a long period of time, I eventually found myself becoming more and more extroverted. I embraced spending time with other people, went out of my way to meet new people, could comfortably introduce myself to strangers, and actually enjoyed it. The Myers-Briggs test now labels me an extrovert. To the people who know me today, this wouldn't be surprising. I'm not the kind of extrovert I envisioned as a child, though. I feel I've done a good job balancing the introvert and extrovert parts of myself, such that I enjoy both types of activities equally. I feel just as comfortable staying at home reading a book as I do going to a new social event and introducing myself to people I've never met. I enjoy both group and solo activities, each for different reasons. Some weeks I'm far more introverted and mostly stay home with my family. Other weeks I have a full social calendar with an event almost every night. I enjoy both just as much. In order to become an extrovert, I found that I had to overcome several blocks to being more extroverted. Chances are that you're in the same boat. You have some of these blocks as well. Blocks to becoming an extrovert. Undervaluing extroversion. Spending time alone and with people are equally important. If you're very introverted, you may undervalue the positive role people can play in your life, such as knowledge, friendship, growth, laughter, and so on. The optimal outcome is to strike a balance between the two. You don't have to give up the introversion activities you enjoy. In fact, when you balance them with more social activities, you'll probably find them even more satisfying. After several nights of being around people, I really look forward to a night by myself to read, meditate, write, etc. And after lots of time alone or with my family, I'm itching to go out and be around other people. Underdeveloped social skills. Social skills can be learned like any other skill set. One reason introverts shy away from social activities is that they don't feel comfortable because they don't know what to do, especially if the unexpected were to occur. Being able to start up a conversation with a stranger and feel completely comfortable doing it is a learnable skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Embrace the fact that you are a beginner and don't compare yourself to others. Envisioning yourself as the wrong kind of extrovert. If you find the extroverted people around you shallow and perhaps even annoying, why would you want to be more like them? You wouldn't. When I was a kid, I really didn't want to be more like extroverts I knew. Even as an adult, my vision of an extrovert was an in-your-face salesperson who only wanted to build a shallow relationship with you so they could sell you something. It seemed very fake and phony to me. And of course, that vision prevented me from ever wanting to be like that. But you needn't choose such a limited vision of yourself. You're free to form your own vision of a positive way to be more extroverted. Hanging out with the wrong people. Why would you want to spend more time with people you don't like? If becoming more extroverted means spending time with people you'd rather avoid, you'll have no motivation to do it. Again, you're free to break this pattern and form a social group that you'd love to be a part of. Overvaluing online socializing. Online socializing has its place in your life, but it's a pale shadow compared to face-to-face, belly-to-belly communication. Voice and body language can communicate a lot more than text. The emotional bonds are easier and faster to establish in person. I feel much closer to the local friends I've known for only a few months than I do the people I've known online for years, but never met in person. It's just not as fun going out to dinner with a laptop. You don't have to do away with online socializing, but don't allow it to crowd out meeting people locally. If you do that, you'll only cause your interpersonal skills to lag further behind. If you have some of these blocks and want to get past them, the first step is to acknowledge them and consider how they're holding you back. Then begin to work on them just as you would any other challenge in your life. Focus your intentions, set goals, make plans, and start taking action. It may be awkward and clumsy at first, but just accept that and get moving anyway. Suggestions for becoming more extroverted. Here are some additional suggestions for how to become more extroverted. Envision the type of extrovert you'd like to be. What's your ideal outcome? If you feel too introverted and want to be more extroverted, start by working on your vision of your outcome. Chances are that if you've been making little progress in this area, you have a somewhat negative vision of extroverts. When I formed a positive vision of being an extrovert, that included building genuine relationships with intelligent people I respect, as opposed to random shallow socializing. I soon began attracting those relationships. Being a dumb jock kind of extrovert still has no appeal to me. Think of the relationships in terms of what you can give, not in terms of what you can get. If you seek to build new relationships based on mutual giving and receiving, you'll have no shortage of friends. Identify people with whom you'd like to build a relationship and start by giving. I've only found that my geeky knowledge is actually a tremendous strength when it comes to socializing because there are an awful lot of non geeks who'd like to understand geeky stuff better. And I can explain it to them in ways they'll understand. For example, I've been teaching some local speaker friends about blogging and web marketing. And in return, I'm learning a lot from them about speaking, humor, etc. There are many intelligent people out there who'd love to have a geek as a friend. What can you bring to a relationship that will be of benefit to someone else? When you figure out what that is, and it's probably many different things, you'll have an easier time attracting new friends into your life. Find the right social group for you. Consciously consider the types of people you'd want to have as friends. There's no rule that says this has to be your peers or coworkers. I actually find myself more interested in making friends with people who are much older than me, as opposed to people my own age or slightly younger. People around my age, 34, tend to be very career and family oriented, but often in a somewhat mindless, socially conditioned way that isn't centered around any consciously chosen life purpose or belief system. And people in their 20s, while often highly energetic, tend to be largely unfocused or focused on trivial pursuits that just aren't that important. If it's been difficult for me to find people near my age where we have enough in common for a long-term friendship, I seem to have an easier time making friends with people in their 40s or 50s and older. They typically have greater knowledge and experience, more fascinating stories to share, more resources, information and ideas, financial resources, contacts, and a better sense of who they are and what they want to do with their lives. Often, I find myself attending social events where I'm the youngest person in the room, but it feels very comfortable and normal for me. Don't be afraid to stretch beyond the most obvious peer group and hang out with people from different ages, neighborhoods, cultures, countries, etc. You might find a variety to be a lot more fun. Play from your strengths. It's interesting that many introverts have no trouble socializing online. In that environment, they're able to play from their strengths. But you can also use your strengths consciously as leverage to branch out into more face to face socializing. For example, after I graduated college, I met a woman on a local BBS before there was much of a World Wide Web. We got to chatting online over a period of weeks. Eventually, we met in person and became friends. I soon fell into her pre existing social group through osmosis. My social calendar went from empty to full almost overnight. That woman, by the way, has been my wife for the past 7.5 years. If you socialize online, see if you can't use the strength to build new local relationships. While people have done this in global forums like online games, I think it's easier to try it in local forums. For instance, there are message boards for people who've recently moved to Las Vegas. Join a club. It's old advice, but it still works. The advantage is that you'll find someone who shares similar interests, which makes it easier to build new relationships. One good club can fill your social calendar. For example, through my membership in Toastmasters, I get invitations to lots of other local social events. I don't go to everything, but it's nice to get those invites. Plus, belonging to an International organization with 200,000 members worldwide creates social inroads around the planet. If you join a club and find that it's not right for you, quit and join something else. My wife and I have both been through a number of local social groups that just didn't resonate with us. Too boring, too slow, too disorganized, too many alcoholics. But one group is all you need. Develop your social skills consciously. You can learn to become better at building rapport, introducing yourself, keeping a conversation going, asking someone out on a date, feeling socially comfortable instead of nervous, and so on. You don't need to be shallow and manipulative about it, but genuinely build these skills because it will greatly enhance your life. One approach I find extremely effective is to ask the other people how he or she got started in his or her current line of work. 80 to 90% of the time, the person will say something like, "Well, that's an interesting story." And I genuinely like hearing these stories. A small basic set of social skills can go a long way because you'll get to reuse them every time you meet someone. Whatever skill you'd like to develop, try doing a Google or Amazon search on it, and you'll probably find plenty of articles and books. Realize that when you hold yourself back from socializing, you're not only depriving yourself, you're also depriving other people of the chance to get to know you. How much longer do you want your future spouse or best friend to remain alone? To an introvert, an extrovert may seem like an alien being. Science has proven that the way an introvert uses and receives information is different than that of an extrovert. In addition, the almost completely different personality may seem alien. If you can understand some of the differences and how they deal with things differently, it will help you get along. Extroverts talk to think. While most introverts tend to think about possibilities and options before mentioning them, extroverts tend to talk things out. This is a huge difference when you're used to formulating some sort of plan before presenting an idea, and they're presenting the ideas in order to formulate a plan. This also means instead of thinking before responding, you may need to say, "Give me a minute to think." Extroverts might think you're waiting for conversation. If you are reading, thinking, or otherwise being quiet, an extrovert may assume you're waiting for someone to talk to you. They may begin a conversation and expect you to get involved. Sometimes you should, as it's a way to socialize. If you're busy or recharging, then you'll have to find a way to indicate you're unavailable to talk. If you have your own office, close your door. In a more public area, apologize and explain that you're busy. Extroverts enjoy socialization. While a party or event with others may be stressful for an introvert, extroverts thrive on them. You may know and understand you are not shy and that you do not lack social skills. Extroverts may wonder. Your extroverted friends, family, and coworkers want you to engage in special events as they are important to them. Most places will have quiet corners and other places to give you a moment to recharge. You can find ways to share who you are, show how fun you are, and still find ways to give yourself time to stay involved. Extroverts may get used to your silence. While an introvert may share moments of silence and wait for those to talk, extroverts view a moment of silence as you not having anything to say. When you have a point to make or something to add, you may need to interrupt, even if that is not what you prefer. You can say, "Excuse me," clear your throat, or even do something physical like waving your hand to allow people to know you have something to say. Communication is key. You will probably notice that talking, conversation, and other methods of communication are mentioned several times. An extrovert has a different mindset than an introvert. Communication is what will help you relate and accept the differences because others cannot read your mind. When they understand what you need, they know how to give that to you. What are the differences between extroverts and introverts? Knowing the difference between extroverts and introverts can help you understand yourself and others. Introversion and extroversion is often described as being a continuum. A person who is very extroverted will not be very introverted. Most people are in the middle, with one side being more dominant than the other. While everyone has variations in their behavior, people are often confused about responses of people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum. How do you recharge? The simplest distinction between introverts and extroverts is how they recharge. An extrovert recharges by being around other people. An introvert recharges by spending time alone or with a trusted friend or two. Whom do you trust? Extroverts are likely to reach for the phone if they're alone. They want someone to talk to about things that are happening or not. Introverts may be considered secretive, but are more likely to trust only a few people. They are likely to think things through before acting or even discussing their thoughts with someone. Think or act. Which comes first? The introvert tends to think first. An introvert tends to observe situations before they participate. They're likely to imagine different possibilities before they take action or discuss matters. Extroverts are people of action. They tend to need to enjoy brainstorming. They are more likely to be spontaneous and take action immediately. Are you talkative? Introverts view extroverts as chatty, sometimes overly talkative. Extroverts tend to view introverts as shy or antisocial. Neither one is the case, actually. Extroverts need to talk to be with others. Introverts prefer to think before talking. Some introverts get overwhelmed at parties or group settings. One reason introverts are considered quiet is they will wait for a pause in a conversation before speaking. Extroverts tend to start speaking when there is a pause. What do you do when stressed? An extrovert is likely to gather friends for an activity or function. They may go shopping or find some place where people are. Introverts are more likely to withdraw. They may go home and curl up with a book or watch a movie at home. An introvert may call a friend or two, but will likely avoid groups until stress subsides. Which one is better? There are some people who will argue that one side or the other is better. It takes both types of people, and those in the middle, to balance the world. While introverts may act like extroverts and extroverts may act like introverts, their nature is one or the other. Pretending to be someone they are not will ultimately fail in some form. If, however, both sides become informed, they can understand and relate to each other. This has been How to Analyze People, Communication, Personalities, and Behavioral Psychology Explained. Written by Jaden Haywards. Narrated by Jason Burkhead. Copyright 2018 by Jaden Haywards. Production copyright 2018 by Jaden Haywards.